There's a town in the middle of America where billionaires become invisible. Not their bodies, their names, their property lines, the paper trail that connects riches to responsibility. The more you look for them, the more they slip behind a curtain that's perfectly legal and almost completely silent. The town has a river with a gentle bend, a minor league baseball team, and a strip of chain restaurants that looks like anywhere else on the interstate. It has church potlucks and school fundraisers, and snow that falls in wide, slow flakes. It does not look like a portal. But if you listen closely in downtown Sioux Falls, South Dakota, you can hear the hum of the world's money passing through. I went there in winter. The sky was white and low, like someone had turned down the brightness on the entire day. The Big Sioux River was rimmed in ice. The buildings were modest, glass mid-rises, law offices, a bank with a bronze bison out front. No gold-plated gates, no marble atriums. The companies here prefer carpet, fluorescent lights, soft doors that close with a hush. And deep inside those offices, hundreds of billions of dollars are told where to go and who gets to be seen owning them. If you've never heard of a trust, imagine a box. You put your house, your stocks, maybe the art on your wall inside the box. Then you hand the keys to someone else, a trustee, who promises to hold it, manage it, and pass it along the way you wrote in the rules. The box is still yours, but also, legally, it kind of isn't. That's the trick. On paper, you've stepped away. In practice, if the rules are written just so, your life doesn't have to change much at all. In most places, that box has limits. How long it can last, what happens if someone sues you, what your kids have to be told. But South Dakota rewrote the rules of the box. Decades ago, lawmakers here quietly eliminated the clock that used to force trusts to end. Now, a family can lock up wealth forever. Add to that strict privacy, courts that seal trust cases by default, and a set of annual legal updates crafted with industry insiders, and you have something new on the American prairie. A place where fortunes can shed their names and keep their power. If you're imagining a smoky back room, replace it with a legislative task force that meets in daylight, publishes minutes, and gets applause for being innovative. This isn't a heist, it's a policy. In an era when states compete like businesses, South Dakota built a product, permanent, private, pliable trusts, and sold it to the world. A county clerk told me that most days are quiet, marriage licenses, property liens, rubber stamps. But every so often, a file comes through with a harmless title. In Re Trust Number 1032 something, and then it vanishes. It's sealed. Even the docket, the basic list of what entered the courthouse, can be invisible. The clerk shrugged. That's the law. Everyone here knows the rules, even if they don't see the consequences. The consequences are human. I talked to a woman in Arizona, let's call her Maria, who won a lawsuit after a hit and run left her with a broken hip and a mountain of bills. The man who hit her had a second home, a boat, a gleaming Instagram. On paper, when it came time to pay, he had nothing. Transfers had routed his assets to a South Dakota trust months before. Maria's judgment became a framed document on a wall. It said she was right. It did not make her whole. When I asked how that could be legal, a trust lawyer reminded me that asset protection is not crime, it's design. People plan for lawsuits. They plan for divorces and creditors and sudden storms. That lawyer wasn't unkind about Maria. He simply saw the world the way a chess player does. You either know how the pieces move or you do not. Inside the trust industry, there's a phrase, the art of removing the name but not the benefit. Write the rules so that distributions flow. Set up a protector, an independent person who can quietly adjust things. Keep the grantor, the person who put the money in, close enough for comfort, far enough for the law. And if life changes, decant the trust. That means pour it into a new one with better terms, like upgrading the box without opening it in public. None of this feels criminal when you say it in a conference room. It feels clever, efficient, client-focused. The result is an economy of invisibility. You can drive by an office park in Sioux Falls and not know that inside one suite, hundreds of trusts, some domestic, many international, are being massaged into compliance with rules no one outside the room understands. You can stand on a quiet street and realize that the very idea of ownership, your house, your car, your debts, has different meanings for different people, because the box exists for some and not for others. If this were just a local story, it would be about a state with no income tax that found a niche, attracted a few thousand high net worth families, created jobs, and kept the lights on. But money doesn't keep still. In 2021, investigative reporters published a trove of documents known as the Pandora Papers, exposing how global elites hide wealth. One of the more surprising findings wasn't in the Caribbean or the Alps, it was here. South Dakota had become a haven for foreign money too, the kind that doesn't want to be indexed or reciprocally reported back to home countries. There's a simple reason. The United States pressured the world to share financial information through a system called FATCA, but did not fully join the world's broader system of sharing called the Common Reporting Standard. To put that simply, we ask other countries to tell us about American accounts abroad, and we don't always return the favor. At the same time, states like South Dakota built a legal structure that whispers, "We don't ask many questions, and we don't tell." So wealth moved. Some of it is clean. Some of it probably is not. The point is that the system doesn't easily want to know. When I reached out to people who build these trusts, they pushed back on the stereotype. They said most clients are small business owners, doctors, farmers, families with a generational plan, and a philanthropy they actually care about. They talked about abusive ex-spouses and frivolous lawsuits, about the need for privacy in a world that wants to dox you for a headline. They looked at me the way you look at someone who has never sat across from a billionaire who fears a kidnapping. And they asked me, "Are you sure you would publish your bank balance?" And then there was the former trust officer who called after hours. "We can talk, but no names," he said. In his view, the line is not so bright. The job is to accept money, verify enough boxes to satisfy regulators, and design a route through the law that gets the client what they want. You might never sit in the same room with the person whose name never appears. You'll talk to their advisors. You'll talk to their family office. You will protect things because that is what the system is built to do. "We don't launder money," he said quickly, almost reflexively. "We launder identity." I thought of a story an advocate told me about a woman in the Midwest. Her name changed, her details clouded for safety, who left a marriage after years of control. Her lawyer thought there would be leverage in the assets, houses, accounts, investments carefully accumulated. Then discovery came back empty. The assets belonged to a trust in South Dakota that didn't need to tell her much, and may not have needed to tell her anything at all. It is difficult to negotiate with a shadow. Privacy is not neutral, the advocate said. It chooses someone to protect. A trust is not a villain. It can fund a scholarship for a kid who is not born yet. It can save a farm from being chopped into parcels. It can prevent a grandson with a gambling problem from burning the family's work in one manic weekend. It can settle a legacy in the best sense, create stability, give continuity. Law is a blunt instrument. Life is sharp. So we hand the blunt instrument to people who can make it cut a little cleaner. But power has a gravity. In South Dakota, the center of gravity shifted when the state decided that wealth could live forever, and that the public's right to see was subordinate to an individual's right to remain unknown. And because it's done through statutes and committees and exams and paperwork, there is no single moment to focus your anger. There are only choices that look boring while they are being made and become dramatic when they become your problem. Walk the river path in Sioux Falls, and you will pass a statue of a wagon train, a bronze tribute to people who carried everything they owned across a continent. In a way, the trust industry is a continuation of that story. How do we carry what we have into a future we will not see? The difference is who gets to put their belongings in a wagon that the law protects from the weather and the wolves. The rest of us are told to save better, to budget, to bootstrap. There's a number that gets thrown around quietly here, hundreds of billions in assets administered. Think about the weight of that money, not as cash, but as leverage. It can buy legislators, politely. It can buy and sell companies, lay off a town on a spreadsheet, and no one will know the buyer's name until the letterhead changes. It can hold a philanthropist's face forward while it pushes liabilities away in the small print. It can follow the letter of the law so closely that the spirit can't breathe. When I asked local business owners what they thought, many shrugged. The trust companies sponsor youth sports and art festivals. They pay good salaries. They keep professional kids from leaving for Minneapolis or Chicago. In a century of brain drain, that matters. And besides, they told me, if South Dakota didn't do it, Delaware would, or Nevada. The arms race isn't a metaphor. It's literal. Policy designed to outrun other policy. One night I sat alone in a diner off 41st Street, the kind with laminated menus and coffee that never cools because the refills don't stop. A man 2 booths over was talking gently into the phone about his daughter's braces and the cost of airfare. The waitress told a joke so old it was new again, and we all laughed. I thought about how every ordinary transaction in this room would leave a little trail. Receipts, stubs, a bank app notification. That's how most of us live, surrounded by trails we cannot erase, documented lives that make us legible to each other and to the systems that run our days. There is a peace in that. There is also a vulnerability. Sioux Falls is not hiding. It's right there, honest and cold and proud of its parks. What's hiding is an idea that the obligations of wealth, to spouses, to victims, to creditors, to countries, are negotiable if you know where to stand. The town is the address, the laws are the cloak, and the rest of us are told that it's complicated, which it is, and therefore beyond the moral imagination of ordinary people, which it shouldn't be. This story ends the way these stories always do, not with a raid or a raid satisfaction, but with a choice. The choice is ours. We can decide that privacy is an absolute, and that what we do with our wealth is our business until we die, and even after. Or we can decide that when you benefit from a society, from its roads, its courts, its currency, you owe it a little visibility. You owe the people who are hurt by your actions a path toward remedy that is not blocked by a box with no windows. Policy is a mirror. South Dakota holds it steady, and we see ourselves. A country that romanticizes the frontier while quietly building fortresses behind the hill. Some fortresses protect families from storms. Some shelter storms that never arrive. Most do both at once, because that is how complicated this is. In a world where everything is data, maybe the final luxury, the ultimate status symbol, is to be unsearchable. On my last day, the clouds lifted. The river moved faster, shards of ice knocking against each other with the sound of glass. I walked past another modest building with a name you will never remember and a security guard you will never notice. And I thought about the distance between what's legal and what feels fair. Somewhere in those rooms, someone is drafting a trust that will outlive both of us. A document that will turn wealth into a story that keeps telling itself without the author's name on the cover. I don't know if that's genius or a glitch. I suspect it's both. But I know this. A society is a web of promises, some written in statutes, some whispered at a kitchen table. Trusts are supposed to be about promises too. If we're going to let fortunes disappear into the heart of America, then the least we can do is ask what promises they're keeping, and to whom. And if there's no way to ask, then maybe the box is too perfect, and the people on the outside are paying for its beauty. There's a town in the middle of America where billionaires become invisible. You can visit, you can have coffee, you can walk its frozen river and feel the wind that once pushed settlers west. And you can wonder whether visibility is a kind of tax we all should pay, and whether some of us have found a way not to. You don't need to see the names to feel the weight. The silence is heavy enough.